appears to be a huge blind spot, a huge open gateway to come straight into Northern Ireland from Southern Ireland. So you travel into Dublin, and then you can literally, as he did, get a bus, reportedly, from Dublin up to Belfast and then claim asylum. So that's a huge gap in our defences. There's enough issues with people coming across the channel on boats, but this seems a huge gap. If you can get over to Dublin by flying from, I think the report is he flew from Paris, so fly over from the continent to Dublin and then literally jump on a bus and travel up to Northern Ireland and then claim asylum. So that seems to be a huge gap in the country's defences. It's exceptionally difficult, but just based on military history, when there were the troubles were going on in the 70s and 80s, to put a hard border across Ireland. But it needs to be reviewed and looked at, because this seems to be a huge gap in our defences from people coming into Northern Ireland and then claim asylum. If it wasn't common, it may well become more common as people now find out about it. But obviously people knew about this route in. He's used it. I've no doubt that other people would know about it, and maybe there are others that come in using the same route. So again, that needs to be looked at by the Home Office. They deal with border controls, etc. So it needs to be reviewed and researched and looked into how many people have claimed asylum in Northern Ireland, having travelled in from Dublin or even onto Britain itself. There are lives at risk by the level of disorder we saw last night in Belfast. By setting fire to properties, to houses, that can easily spread. The fire service have difficulty in moving across the city with different seats of disorder, so their response time is then delayed. They often need the police to escort them in or make sure it's safe for them to enter an area, because they've also come under attack previously in Belfast. So a number of factors there. If the fire service do not get to a property quickly enough to start putting the fires out, that could very, very easily spread to other occupied premises. So there are lives at risk across the whole of the community. It's exceptionally dangerous and life-threatening to set fires to residential properties, because it can then impact on other residential properties with people still inside. We saw advertised protests from about 7 p.m. in Belfast and across Belfast city centre. Number of locations, about 20 locations, spread right the way across the city, which gives an operational challenge for policing to monitor or police all or any of those where they start getting a gathering of people. You then have to wait to see if it's going to be a peaceful protest, a lawful protest, where people just form up and walk through the streets, exercising their freedom of speech, where they're fully entitled to do. And the police actually said they would facilitate peaceful protest, and people are entitled to do that. That was about 7 o'clock, and we saw separate incidents of those across the city centre. We then saw some fires being started in different locations. The main one was a bus being set on fire next to what looked like some flats, and that then spread across the city. So different fires being set in different places, which then started to stretch the emergency services. The peaceful protest then seemed to come to an end, and the numbers reduced slightly. And then as darkness fell, the numbers increased, with more younger people dressed all in black with balaclavas to hide their identity coming out in the streets, more fires being set, houses being set on fire. My understanding, people having to be removed from their houses because the properties were on fire. So we saw the disorder escalate and spread across the city and become, dare I say it, more younger in the attendees. The concern is that because certain elements within society and on social media are using the incident in Southampton, linking it almost to the incident in Belfast, calling people to come out on the street and show their anger. Cold rage needs to be used, etc. Words that are very evocative and emotive. The concern is it could start to spread over onto the mainland, onto Great Britain itself, in different areas. There are different aspects. There's no actual balanced, reasoned either discussion or argument going on about either immigration or the incident in Southampton itself. That's subject to a separate investigation by the Independent Office of Police Conduct, and that will take its own course, and they will review the officer's actions, the police response, etc. down there. That is totally separate to the immigration issue that we saw and the serious assault we saw Monday night in Belfast. But the two are being combined by elements within society who literally want to divide the whole community and using it to their own ends. I'd anticipate there being more disorder over the next couple of days. I think just with the history of disorder in Belfast, we're coming into the marching season, the time of the year when there are historically lots of disorder, lots of protests. I think there are a small section of the community that dare I say it, look forward to this time of year, because they then can go out on the streets and riot, cause serious disorder, significant and serious damage being caused. So I think there's an element of the community there that actually look forward to this time of year, because it does almost allow them to come out on the streets and behave in this way. So I wouldn't expect it, but I'd anticipate it. And I think the police service need to, and they will be, reviewing their resources, reviewing the tactics. The numbers they had out last night, they were stretched very thin across Belfast city centre. You may well see mutual aid being asked from other forces across Britain to send them over to Ireland. There are different tactics used in Northern Ireland, so officers that travel over would need either a refresher or being trained to work with armoured Land Rovers, water cannon and baton guns. They are optional tactics that they have previously used in Northern Ireland, but officers from Britain, from the mainland forces, would need to be either refreshed again if they had previous training, because they have sent mutual aid before, or they would need new training, because there's slightly different tactics when you're working in a public order situation with water cannon and with the armoured Land Rovers. PSNI deploy slightly differently. They use the armoured Land Rovers, and I think there's about 3 or 4 in each one, whereas on the mainland in Britain, police support units are in personnel carriers. So there's normally like a sergeant and 6 PCs, and there's 3 carriers, whereas in Ireland they use a Land Rover with smaller numbered units. So they have more Land Rovers around. They also use their vehicles very proactively, as we saw last night, with vehicles moving forward almost as a front line, with the officers behind the vehicles using them as a shield. Again, that's a tactic specific to Belfast. So officers that travelled over to support them would need some sort of refresher or training in the type of tactics being used, because it is very different in Belfast. PSNI are hugely experienced in dealing with this. Literally every single year, they are. You can mark it on your calendar when they're going to start seeing confrontation and serious disorder, and the armoured Land Rovers have to come out. So they are well used to the tactics. They're highly experienced. The challenge comes from, as we saw last night, when you have pockets of serious disorder spread across such a large area, and it was a large area. I was watching the aerial footage from the helicopter, and it was taking a couple of minutes to get to the next area of disorder. You combine that with travelling from one point to the other using the road system, and it takes you even longer. So you can see how widely spread their resources were. That will be part of their review today, looking at the number of resources they had, if they feel they coped with it sufficiently, or they need mutual aid, more officers on the streets, public order trained, with the right kit, with the right training and understanding of tactics. Then they'll ask for more assistance from Britain, from the mainland forces. But as I said, those officers need to know and understand the types of tactics being used, because it is slightly different, but in many aspects quite different to what they're used to.